Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a truly bizarre historical event, one that almost, well, defies belief.
Yeah.
The dancing plague of 1518 in Strasbourg.
It is a remarkable story, and to really try and get to the bottom of it for you, we've gathered quite a range of material.
Okay.
We have historical accounts from the time, some modern analyses, think Retrospect Journal, the British Psychological Society, and even a briefing from the Christian Institute that touches on, how behaviors can spread, social contagion.
And we've also got context from Wikipedia entries on things like the Great Famine, Strasbourg's history,
Right.
plus pieces from the Public Domain Review and Sick History to give us a richer picture. So quite a collection.
Indeed. And the central mystery, the thing we're really trying to unpack is this. Can you actually imagine an entire city gripped by an uncontrollable urge to dance?
Day and night.
Day and night. And according to the accounts, some people danced until they literally dropped dead from exhaustion, heart attack, stroke.
It sounds utterly unbelievable, like something from a grim fairy tale.
It really does. So our mission today is to sift through all this, explore the theories, the history, and try to make sense of this strange, strange event for you.
Okay, let's dive in. Where did this madness actually begin?
Well, all the sources point to July 1518, and it starts with one woman, Frau Traffe.
Just one person.
Just one. She simply started dancing in the streets, but this wasn't a party.
No joyous occasion then.
Not at all. She just began dancing and kept going.
And it didn't stay contained for long, did it?
No, that's the striking thing. Within just a few days, more than 30 other people had joined her.
30 people. Dancing where?
In the public market, down alleys, in the main streets, just dancing relentlessly day and night.
It must have been incredibly disturbing to witness. Utterly baffling.
Completely. The physicians at the time, they were mystified. Their first thought, based on the medicine of the day,
What did they think it was?
they concluded it was overheated blood, from the old humoral theory.
Right, the four humors, so hot blood.
Yeah.
And what did they suggest doing about it?
Well, this is where it gets even stranger. The city council, they decided to help.
Help? How? By stopping them.
No, by building a stage. In the grain market, the horse market.
A stage. Why on earth?
They even hired musicians. The idea, based on that hot blood diagnosis, was that the afflicted needed to dance off the sickness.
So lean into it. Keep dancing until it's gone.
Exactly. They thought maybe organized dancing, pushing them to exhaustion even, would somehow cure them, restore balance.
That sounds incredibly risky.
It backfired. Spectacular.
Oh dear. How so?
Instead of curing anyone, turning it into this public spectacle just seemed to, pour fuel on the fire.
It drew more people in.
Dramatically so. Within about a month, the number of dancers swelled to around 400 people.
400. That's a huge number for a city back then.
It's staggering, and the consequences were horrific. We mentioned people dying.
Yes, dancing themselves to death.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to comprehend that level of physical compulsion.
The accounts claim people just kept going until they collapsed from exhaustion, heart attack, or stroke. It's a grim, grim picture.
Just terrible. And you mentioned earlier this wasn't necessarily a one-off event. Strasbourg wasn't the first time something like this happened.
That's a really important piece of context, actually. Historians believe the 1518 event was just one of several medieval dancing plagues.
Really? Where else?
Mostly along the Rhine and Moselle rivers. There are records going back as far as 1374.
Wow. And what do historians think caused those earlier ones?
They're often attributed to what used to be called hysterical contagion.
Hysterical contagion.
Yeah.
That sounds like an older term for something.
It is.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we'd more likely call it mass psychogenic illness. It's this idea that psychological distress can manifest as physical symptoms and spread through a group.
Okay, so the physical symptoms are real, but the root cause is psychological, amplified by the group.
Precisely. It's not just in their heads in a dismissive way. The physical effects are genuine, but triggered and spread psychologically.
Got it. So back to 1518. The overheated blood theory clearly didn't pan out. What other explanations have been suggested over the years?
Well, one theory that got quite a bit of attention, especially later on, was ergot poisoning.
Ergot. It's a fungus, right? Grows on rye.
Exactly. St. Anthony's fire, it was sometimes called. Rye was a staple food, and if it got damp, this fungus could grow.
And what does ergot do?
It can cause a range of nasty symptoms: muscle twitching, spasms, jerking, even hallucinations. So you can see why people thought, maybe that's it.
Yeah, the twitching and spasms sound a bit like uncontrolled dancing. It seems plausible.
It does on the surface, but there's a major problem with the ergot theory.
Oh, What's that?
Well, historian John Waller, among others, has pointed this out quite forcefully. Ergotism severely restricts blood flow, especially to your hands and feet.
Okay.
So trying to dance continuously for days would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. Your limbs would likely be cold, numb, maybe even gangrenous. It just doesn't fit with sustained, energetic dancing.
Right, that makes sense. You couldn't physically keep that up if your circulation was compromised. So ergotism is largely off the table.
It seems very unlikely, yes. Which brings us back to that idea of mass psychogenic illness, or mass hysteria, as it's sometimes called.
This seems to be the leading explanation now.
It's certainly the one favored by many modern historians and psychologists. The idea that extreme psychological distress within the community manifested physically as this uncontrollable dancing and spread through social contagion.
And Strasbourg in 1518. Sounds like there was plenty of distress to go around.
Oh, absolutely. The sources paint a picture of a community under immense pressure.
What kinds of pressures are we talking about?
Multiple things hitting at once. There'd been really bad harvests, leading to famine, malnutrition, widespread desperation.
That alone is huge stress.
Definitely. Add to that political instability, creating uncertainty and anxiety. And then a new and terrifying disease had arrived. Syphilis.
Syphilis, too. Wow. So famine, political turmoil, and a scary new disease. That's a lot.
It's a potent mix for creating extreme collective anguish and fear, a society on edge.
And then you throw in the power of belief systems. St. Vitus was mentioned.
Yes, this is crucial. There was a very strong, deeply ingrained belief at the time in the power of saints, including St. Vitus.
And he was associated with dancing.
He was. There was a belief that St. Vitus could inflict a curse, a dancing plague sometimes called St. Vitus's dance, as punishment.
So people genuinely feared this specific curse.
Very much so. And when you combine that specific fear with the immense background stress, well, the theory is that people's minds unconsciously latched onto that fear.
So the psychological distress manifested in the form they most dreaded.
Kind of like the nocebo effect, where negative expectation leads to negative symptoms. Their belief might have shaped the physical expression of their psychological turmoil.
That's a powerful, almost frightening idea. The mind literally creating the feared illness.
It is. And it's not entirely without precedent. We see similar dynamics in other cases of mass psychogenic illness.
Like what? Are there more modern examples?
Yes, the Tanganyika laughter epidemic in 1962 is often cited.
Laughter. An epidemic of laughter.
And crying, yes. It started in a school, spread to hundreds, maybe thousands, across villages. Schools had to close.
Uncontrollable laughter and crying spreading like a virus.
It's a striking parallel. It shows how these psychic contagions can grip a community under stress, even manifesting in seemingly bizarre ways.
And wasn't there also something called the Werther effect mentioned, linked to a book?
Ah, yes, The Sorrows of Young Werther. An incredibly popular, very tragic novel from the 18th century.
What happened there?
The main character dies by suicide in a specific way. And disturbingly, after it was published, there were reports of copycat suicides across Europe using similar methods.
Wow. So a fictional story influencing real-world tragic behavior on a large scale.
It's a stark example of how ideas and behaviors, especially when highly publicized or emotionally charged, can become socially contagious.
Okay, so we have the psychological theories, the stress, the belief systems. What about the broader culture? Did dance itself play a special role in 16th century life?
It definitely did. Dance was common. It was part of celebrations, social bonding, even religious expression sometimes.
So people danced regularly.
Yes, but the church often had a wary eye on it, sometimes saw it as potentially sinful or leading to moral decay. So it was present, but perhaps a bit charged culturally.
But the kind of dancing in 1518 was obviously totally different. Uncontrolled, relentless.
Entirely different. And we've touched on the stress and superstition. These seem key to creating that fertile ground for the mass psychogenic illness.
The famine, the disease fears, the political instability, all swirling together with this belief in saints and curses.
Exactly. People were suffering intensely, looking for answers. And in their worldview, a supernatural explanation, like the wrath of St. Vitus, might have seemed horribly plausible.
And the way the authorities reacted. That shift is interesting too, isn't it? First encouraging it, then clamping down.
Yes, that U-turn is revealing. They start by building stages, hiring musicians based on that initial medical advice.
Trying to dance it out.
Right. But when it just got worse and worse, with hundreds involved, by September 1518, they'd completely changed tack.
What did they do then?
They banned almost all public dancing and music in the city, a complete reversal.
Suggesting they realized their first approach wasn't working? Or maybe they were just desperate?
Probably a bit of both. Panic, maybe, and a dawning realization that something else was going on. But the religious angle didn't go away.
No. The clergy seemed convinced about St. Vitus from the start, right?
Largely, yes. That interpretation remained very strong. And it heavily influenced the final official response.
Which was?
Taking the afflicted people to the shrine of St. Vitus in a nearby town called Severn.
A mass pilgrimage to appease the saint they thought was responsible.
That seems to be exactly the thinking. If St. Vitus caused it, maybe petitioning him directly at his shrine could cure it.
And what actually happened there at the shrine? Was there a specific ritual?
According to the accounts, yes. They brought the dancers into the shrine, placed them under a wooden carving of the saint.
Okay.
They gave them small crosses to hold and put special red shoes on their feet.
Red shoes? Why red?
The accounts mention them being marked with holy symbols, sprinkled with holy water, consecrated oil. It was a very specific, religiously charged ritual.
Incense, chanting, the whole atmosphere.
Exactly. Highly symbolic, performed in this sacred space, and apparently for many it seemed to work.
It calmed them down. The dancing stopped.
The reports suggest it had a calming effect on many, whether it was divine intervention, as they believed,
Or the power of suggestion. A powerful psychological counter-ritual.
That's the modern interpretation. Providing a clear, authoritative, religious pathway to recovery might have been enough to break the psychological cycle for some, given the context.
It's fascinating how belief could potentially both trigger and cure something like this.
It really highlights the immense power of the mind and cultural context.
So looking back at this whole bizarre episode from 1518, why is it still relevant? Why should we care about a dancing plague from centuries ago?
Well, on one level, it's just a gripping, almost unbelievable historical mystery. It pushes our understanding of human behavior under extreme stress.
A reminder of how strange things can get.
Definitely. But it also serves as this stark example of the interplay between mind, body, and society. How collective stress and belief can manifest physically.
And it's not just history, is it? You mentioned parallels.
Right. We still see outbreaks of apparent mass psychogenic illness today. Maybe not dancing plagues, but unexplained symptoms spreading through schools or workplaces.
So the underlying mechanism, this social contagion of physical symptoms driven by psychology, that's still a factor.
It absolutely seems to be. Understanding the dancing plague helps us frame and perhaps understand these modern occurrences too.
And it pops up in popular culture too, doesn't it? As this symbol of, what, irrationality.
Yeah, it's become shorthand for spontaneous, inexplicable collective behavior. It captures the imagination because it feels so outside the norm.
But thinking about social contagion today, it feels like the internet and social media have added a whole new dimension.
Oh, absolutely. That's a critical point for modern relevance. The sheer speed and reach of online communication.
How ideas and behaviors can spread like wildfire now.
Exactly. We see beliefs, moods, and unfortunately, sometimes harmful behavior spreading rapidly through online communities. It's a modern form of social contagion.
The sources mention some worrying examples, like pro-anorexia content.
Yes, tragically. Certain online spaces can form around shared vulnerabilities, creating these echo chambers.
And they can end up reinforcing harmful behaviors.
In some cases, yes. Things like anorexia or self-harm can get disturbingly normalized, even glamorized within these tight-knit online groups. They might develop their own language icons.
Like the pro-Ana idea, personifying the illness almost like a goddess figure.
Exactly that kind of thing. It creates this strong but deeply unhealthy sense of shared identity and belonging, often driven by peer pressure and a desire for acceptance within that specific group.
And this constant sharing of anxieties, this co-rumination.
Yeah, dwelling on negative thoughts and feelings together can unfortunately intensify distress for everyone involved, potentially spurring on more harmful actions.
It's sobering. Social contagion isn't just about physical proximity anymore. Online networks can be incredibly potent.
They really can. The dynamics aren't entirely different from 1518 peer pressure, belief systems, fear of exclusion, but the medium allows it to happen faster and wider.
So wrapping this all up, this deep dive into the dancing plague, what are the main things we should take away from it?
Well, drawing from all the material you share, 1518 remains deeply perplexing, but the most convincing picture is a perfect storm, really.
A mix of factors.
Yeah. Intense societal stress, famine, disease, instability hitting a population with very strong, specific cultural and religious beliefs. And then this phenomenon of mass psychogenic illness, social contagion taking hold.
The mind-body connection amplified by the community.
Exactly. It's a powerful, if unsettling, reminder of how deeply connected our psychological states, our physical health, and our social environments truly are.
It really is. And it definitely makes you think. Considering 1518 and these modern online contagions, what other behaviors out there, things that seem baffling on the surface, might actually have similar roots? These complex webs of psychology, stress, and social influence.
It really does make you wonder about the invisible currents shaping not just what we think, but what we physically do, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.